Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to make this video to help you guys prepare for or retake the Unit 1 test. So here are the types of questions you're going to come across. Let's suppose you are selling apples at a store and you sell 0 apples for $0, 1 apple for $5, 2 apples for $10, 3 apples for $15, 4 apples for $20. These are obviously very fancy apples. So number of apples is on the left and the cost of those apples is on the right. The more apples, the more cost. So now we need to see which kind of equation is going to represent that. Let's just look at a couple. I was about to write y equals, but here we're not doing x and y. Here we have a and c. We got some different letters. So let's say we got c equals a plus 5, c equals 2a minus 5, c equals 5a, and c equals a plus 5x. Okay, so we got these different options. We got to decide which one best describes the situation. So let's just try this first one. Let's try this equation and see if it works. So if a is 0, we're going to get that 0 and plug it in there. So now if we have 0 apples, according to the first equation, it would cost $5. And so this one doesn't work because 0 apples cost $0, so that doesn't work. Let's try this equation. So here, let's just plug in 0 again. So we're going to plug in 0 right here. So 2 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 5 is negative 5. And again, that doesn't work because 0 apples should cost $0. And that equation says 0 apples should cost negative $5. So we're crossing off that one. Now let's try this one right here. C equals 5a. Now we're going to get that 0. We're going to plug it in this equation. And we have 5 times 0. Well, 5 times 0 is 0, and that checks out. Let's try 1. Let's plug 1 in. 1 times 5 is 5. It works. Let's plug 2 in. 5 times 2 is 10. Let's plug 3 in. 5 times 3 is 15. Plug 4 in. 5 times 4 is 20. And so this is the equation that's going to work for us. So in this one, the approach I'm taking is kind of a multiple choice test taking strategy. We're just trying to find the best option here for our equation. Okay, let me give you a different example here, and this time you write your own equation. Let's say you are selling avocados, and here's the cost, and we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 3, 6, 9. So I'm going to pause for a second, and now you find your own equation for this. Cool. So you should get y, or actually not y, the cost is 3 times a. It's $3 per avocado. So the word per means this is our slope. And we could do a plus 0 because the cost you start with is $0. But the simplest way is just c equals 3a. Okay, let's go on and do a different type of question. We're going to talk about a few types of questions having to do with slope. So let's do this one. Let's do x and y, and let me throw in this little table here. We'll do 1, 6, 11, 21, and let's do 10, 12, 14, 18. Okay, and so the question is find the slope. Now the slope, remember, slope is equal to your rise divided by your run. Now the rise is the change in the y values divided by the change in the x values. So let's look at the change in the y values here. So the change in the y values, from 10 to 12, I'm going up by 2. From 12 to 14, I'm going up by 2. And this is a little different here. 14 to 18, I'm going up by 4. Now, it seems a little bit weird, but let's see if we can make sense of that. Now, let's look. So these are all the change in the y's. So change by 2, change by 2, change by 4. Now here, let's talk about the changes in the x values. So change in the x values from here to here, from 1 to 6, we're going up by 5. We're going up by 5. From 11 to 21, we're going up by 10. So this is the change in the x values. So again, slope is the change in y divided by the change in x. So that's going to be change in y on top, 2, change in x on bottom, 2 over 5. So 2 over 5. And that should be equal to this. This is also 2 over 5. And that should also be equal to this, which is 4 over 10. And if you reduce that fraction, 4 over 10 is the same thing as 2 over 5. So the slope here, we would just write 2 over 5. Now let's go give an example of a different table here. Let's do x, we're going to do y, and let's say we got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, negative 5, negative 5, negative 5, negative 5, negative 5. So in this example, what is our slope? Again, the slope is change in the y values divided by the change in the x values. So change in the y values from negative 5 to negative 5, I've changed 0, and I've changed 0, and I've changed 0, and I've changed 0. From here, I've changed 2, 2, 2, and 2. So here, the change in the y values, well, there has been no change in the y values. The y values have stayed the same. So the change in the y values is 0, and then on the bottom, it's 2. So 0 over 2, 0 over 2, 0 over 2, and 0 over 2 is just going to be 0. So your slope here is 0. And if we had to write an equation for this line, we'd write y equals negative 5, because that's, because y is equal to negative 5. No matter what x does, y is always equal to negative 5 forever and ever. Always will be negative 5. And let's go and look at a different equation right here. Let's do x, let's do y, and this one, let's do it like this. We'll do 3, 3, 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. So here, let's talk about the change in the y values. Change in the y values, this is plus 1, plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. Change in the x values is 0, right? They're not changing. So again, slope is change in the y's divided by the change in the x's. Change in the y's here is going to be 1. Change in the x's is 0. Now what happens on a calculator when you do 1 divided by 0? You get undefined. And so that'll be your answer. That's an undefined slope. And what it looks like graphically is, let's just look at this right here. If this is our x, y coordinate grid, the x value is always 1, 2. X value is always 3. So if we graph this, it looks like that. So it's a vertical line, and vertical lines have undefined slopes. Okay, now let me give you a couple to try on your own here. Okay, so let's do, actually, yeah, we'll do our x, our y, and 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So go ahead and figure out the slope on this one. Okay, so you should have gotten the change in the y values is 2, change in the x values is 1, so the slope is 2 over 1, which is 2. Okay, now let's do this one. X, y, 5, 7, 9, 11, and let's do 2, 2, 2, 2. Find the slope for this one. Okay, the slope for this one is 0 because the change in the y values is 0. There's no change in the y values. Change in the x values is 2, and 0 over 2 is 0. So the answer is 0. The y values don't change. If we graph this on the xy grid, this is x, this is y, then it just stays right here at positive 2. Okay, what about this one? We got x, we got y, and now we'll do 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, and this is going to be negative 8, negative 7, negative 6, negative 5, negative 4. Okay, so find the slope on this one. Okay, you should say the slope is undefined because here I'm going up by 1, up by 1, up by 1, and the x value is 0. So the change in the y, each time my y value changes by 1, the x value doesn't change. 1 divided by 0 is undefined. Okay, different type of problem. Here we're finding the slope between 2 points. So how do you find the slope between 2 points? So let's do our point, something like negative 16 comma 2, and then we've got 2 comma 9. Let me show you 2 different ways of looking at this. Actually, maybe I'll show you 3 different ways just to visualize this different. Okay, here from 2 to 9, you think to yourself, from 2 to 9, how much am I changing? You start here, you start at 2, you go to 9. And so the difference between 2 to 9 is 7. You're going up by 7. Now what about the difference from negative 16 to 2? Well, here, maybe a number line would help you visualize this. This is 0, and then down here, somewhere down there is negative 16, and then somewhere up here is 2. So you start here, you start at negative 16, so I'm starting here, and I'm ending up at 2. So how much am I going up? Well, from negative 16 to here, to 0, that's 16. From 0 to 2, that's 2. So all together, I'm increasing by 18. Okay, so slope is rise over run. It's the change in the y values divided by the change in the x values. Now, which one is change in y? The 7 or the 18? Well, remember the second coordinate here, these are my y, right? The second one is always the y value. So this is your change in the y's, it's 7. Change in the x's is 18. So your slope is 7 over 18. Now, let me show you a different way of looking at the same question. Here, we're going to, instead of kind of looking at it and thinking of it with a number line, let's look at it with a formula. So the formula goes like this. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we're going to call this x1, y1. We're going to call this x2, y2. So let's write this out. y2 is 9 minus y1, which is 2. On the bottom, x2, which is 2, minus negative 16. Now it's important here that you always include the minus here as part of the formula. So it's 2 minus negative 16. The error that I see a lot is people writing like this, 2 minus 16. It's 2, this 2 minus the negative 16. Okay, so 9 minus 2 is 7. 2 minus a negative. What are we going to do with that minus minus? The minus minus turns into a positive. And so now that's going to be 2 plus 16, and so that's 7 over 18, which we had before. And I think we'll leave it at that. Let's go ahead and give you guys one to practice here. So 3 comma negative 5. And let's do 5 comma negative 10. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to do this. Let's look at it this way. So from negative 5 to negative 10, so think of this in a number line. You're at 0, you're at negative 5. This is where you start with. You end up at negative 10. Now from negative 5 down to negative 10, you're actually going down in the negative direction. So this is minus 5. Negative 5 minus 5 is negative 10. And from 3 to 5, again, if you're on a number line, let's look at this one. You're at 3, you start at 3, you end up at 5, you're going up by 2. So on the y values, I'm going down by 5. On the x values, I'm going up by 2. So the slope is going to be negative 5 over 2. Now, using the formula, we're going to do negative 5 minus negative 10. On the bottom, we're going to do 3 minus 5. Let's see if we get the same thing. Negative 5 minus negative 10. The minus minus turns into a positive. Negative 5 plus 10, same thing as 10 minus 5 is 5. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. And these are going to be the same value. Okay, so that slope between 2 points. Next thing we're going to talk about here is equations of a line. So here, let me draw out this line. Here is the x-axis. Here is the y-axis. And let's draw this line. Let's draw it like this. Okay, so we need to come up with an equation. Our equation is always going to be in this form. is going to be y equals mx plus b, where m stands for the slope. Slope is rise over run. So let's figure out the slope here. Let's pick this point, and let's pick this point. From here to here, how much do I rise? Well, I rise up 1, and from here to here, how much do I run? I run 2. So the slope is going to be 1/2, so y equals 1/2 x plus b. What does b stand for? B stands for the y-intercept, and the y-intercept there is 2. So our equation is y equals 1/2 x plus 2. Okay, let's do a different question. So here, let's do this. Let's have it go. Cool. All right, so we have that line right there. So here, again, our equation is y equals something x plus something. Now this first something is our slope, and our slope is our rise over our run. So let's look from here to here. Between those 2 points, I am going down 2. So it's going to be -2, and I'm going over 1. So -2 over 1, x, plus the y-intercept here. This is the point 2. And if we simplify that a bit, we're going to do y equals -2x plus 2, and that's our equation. Okay, so here, let me draw a different line for you to do on your own. Okay, so go ahead and write the equation for that line. Okay, so here, y equals our slope from, let's pick this point and this point. From this point, I go up 2 over 3. So the slope is 2/3, and the y-intercept is this point, which is 1. So y equals 2/3 x plus 1. Okay, what if you were given this thing kind of backwards? What if instead of giving a line and having to write the equation, you're given the equation and have to write the line? So let's do this. Y equals -3/5 x minus 2. So how do you graph these? The important thing is you start with this one right here. You start with that -2. So this is where you start. You always start with that y-intercept. So you start with the -2, and here my slope is -3/5. So I'm going to be going down 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to be going over 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's my new point. So down 3 and over 5. And so now I connect those 2 dots, and that's it. There's your line. Okay, and you can extend this back this way. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and draw that point. But you get the idea. Okay, let's do one more here real quick. Let's do y equals 2/3 x minus 2. So we're going to always start here, -2. We're going to go up 2 over 3. Up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3, and then connect those dots, and that's your line. Cool. Next thing, what if we had to graph something like this? Y equals 2. Well, if it's y equals 2, this is going to be like this. Horizontal line. What if it was something like y equals -1? Then it's going to go like this. Okay. What if we had to graph something like y equals x? All right, y equals x. This one might be a little bit challenging. because it looks different from our normal y equals mx plus b form. So let's try to think of this in terms of the y equals mx plus b. Y equals x is the same thing as y equals 1 over 1x plus 0. So here, the reason I can write 1 over 1 is 1 divided by 1 is 1. 1 times x is x. So that doesn't change the x here. And then adding 0 doesn't change it. So I've written it in the form y equals mx plus b in a way that's mathematically equivalent to that expression right there. Okay, so using our same technique before, we're going to start there at 0. And then our slope is 1 over 1. So up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And we connect those, and we end up with that line right there. Okay, so let's do this problem. What if we had to graph y equals 2x? Well, again, this is the same thing as y equals 2x plus 0. So I start at 0, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, and I connect those dots, and I end up with that equation. Well, what if I wanted to graph just y equals 2? Well, y equals 2, this is the same thing as y equals 0x plus 2, right? Because 0x is just, that gets rid of the x's. So y equals 2. Y equals 2, this one, if I graph that, that's going to look like this. So this is a horizontal line. Y equals 2 is a nice flat horizontal line. Okay, I think, yeah, let's do one last question. What if you're given a table and you have to write an equation for something in the table? So let's do this table. We got x and y, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and here we have -2, let me draw that better, -2, 0, 2, and 4. Okay, so let's try to graph this and see what happens here. So if x is 1, y is -2. If x is 2, y is 0. If x is 3, y is 2. And if x is 4, y is 4, which is right there. So you have this line that we're trying to draw. Okay, so we need to come up with an equation for the line. The equation is in the form y equals mx plus b. Now that m value is the slope. And we talked before about finding the slope. Slope is the change in the y values. So from here to here, we're going up by 2, up by 2, up by 2. And from here, we're going over by 1, over by 1, over by 1. So the slope is 2 over 1. And now what's the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept, we don't know. We don't know the 0th term. We got to go follow this line. And we follow this line right here. We end up at that point, which is -4. So cleaning this up, we get y equals 2x minus 4, and that's our answer. And if you look on the table here, if I can squeeze this term in, the 0th term would be -4. So -4, -2, 0, 2, 4. Okay, for this one, I'm going to write the equation here, or write a table, and then I want you to come up with the equation. So we've got our x, we've got our y, and we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to do 7, 11, 15, 19. Okay, so come up with the equation for this line. Okay, so hopefully you've thought of this equation, y equals mx plus b. M is the slope. This is +4, this is +4, this is +4. Here we're going +1, +1, +1. So the slope is 4, y equals 4x plus b. Now b is the 0th term, and we got to kind of make this up here because we don't have it on the table. So we're going to squeeze in 0 here. Now what would 0 be? If I'm going backwards, I'm going to -4, -4, -4. 19 minus 4 is 15, 15 minus 4 is 11, 11 minus 4 is 7, 7 minus 4 is going to be 3, And so that's our equation. Y equals 4x plus 3. Now, it's always good on these ones to plug a number in and see if it works. Let's plug in that 4. So if you plug in that 4, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 plus 3 is 19, and 19 is exactly what is in the table. Okay, one last question involving story problems. Let's say you get in a taxi, okay? And the taxi has a sign and it says the initial fare is $5. So once you step inside the taxi, you pay $5. And then it says every mile is $2. Okay, so let's try to write an equation that describes the situation. Y equals mx plus b. Now in a story problem, the m is your rate. It's something that can be written with the word per. And the b is what you start with. So in our equation, y equals, now the every mile, every is the same thing as per. So it's $2 per mile. So we're gonna write 2x plus, and then that 5 is what you start with. The starting fare is 5. Y equals 2x plus 5. Now another way of thinking about it is this. You step in a taxi and it costs $5. You drive a mile and it's $2. You drive another mile, it's $2. You drive another mile, it's $2. You drive 10 miles, then it's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 10 times. So it's the same thing here. If you drove 10 miles, then it's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, 2 times 10, plus the $5 you get just when you step in the taxi. That's going to be 20 plus 5, 25. So here in this example, what does the x stand for? The x stands for number of miles, and this is the independent variable. It's independent because you get to choose how many miles you go in the taxi cab. What you don't get to choose, though, is the cost, right? When you arrive at the destination, you can't tell the taxi driver, I think it should cost $17, right? He's going to use this formula and figure out the cost of that ride. So y is the total cost. Now remember this for y. Y is usually the total, okay? So y is the total cost here, and the total cost is the dependent variable. It depends on the number of miles you chose to drive. Okay, and in this equation, what does the 2 stand for? The 2 is your slope, and it's the cost per mile, and the 5 is your initial fare. It stands for your y-intercept. Okay, now let's see. Let's use our equation. So we got y equals 2x plus 5. And let's say you decide to drive 100 miles. What's going to be the cost? Well, if you drive 100 miles, remember miles is our independent variable. It's what we get to choose. We're going to plug it in there for x. So it's $2 per mile. You drove 100 miles, plus it's $5 to start with. So $2 per mile, you drove 100 miles, so that's $200 there, plus there's a $5 initial fee. So altogether, it costs $205. Okay, that's it, guys. Study hard, and I'll see you later.